Black Cat Lounge is sponsored by Beacon, a home for those who have a passion for filmmaking and the unusual. The Haunted Hinsdale House. Those who walk there do not walk alone. Paraware, apparel for the action-seeking paranormal investigator. Dragonfly art and soul for all of your magical, metaphysical, and spiritual needs. Mystery Control, your go-to feed for science, magic, true crime, the paranormal, and so much more. Niagara, one of the top-rated destinations in Western New York. The Black Cat Lounge is part of the Paraflix Entertainment Network. Everybody, welcome to the Black Cat Lounge. Thank you so much for being here. You know what? I'm really hoping that you guys have all dug out. It's getting warmer. We call that fall spring, but it doesn't matter because in this any kind of like wisp of spring, you become happy. And that's what we want everybody to be. We want everybody to be as happy as possible. We want everybody to enjoy themselves. And when you're happy, you get out there and get it. Well, you do some adventures. That's the way we always do it. That's what I want you guys to do. You guys got homework. Have an adventure. I don't care. Listen, I don't care if it's walking out on the muddy grass without shoes on, or if you go out there and you really kind of find yourself a really cool location to either photograph or investigate. So you guys got homework. Guys, listen, you know what? I want you guys to go and just think about this. Just think about this. Think about it. We all get together. We find ourselves a midway point. And maybe we can go and do an overnight investigation at a location somewhere in between wherever we all live. What do you think? What do you think? You want to do that? I'll do some research and we'll figure it out. Guys, we have a great guest tonight. Oh my God, I love this guy. This guy is amazing. You know, a lot of times people say, well, he is an expert in this, or he is an expert in that. Well, this guy is a walking encyclopedia. He's a walking encyclopedia, and we'll get to that. You know what? He's multi-talented. He's an amazing guy. You know, he's one of these guys that goes out there. He's a musician. He's traveled the world. He is he's a historian. He's a researcher. He gets out there and he digs his heels into the sacred soil of what he's been researching over these many, many years. Now, he and I share what many people consider a rather dark interest. I don't think it's so dark. I kind of grew up with him. So, you know, I don't think they're so dark. But you know what? It's a lot of people do. His obsession, and I'm going to call it an obsession because it's my obsession too. His obsession in collecting and researching talking boards, Ouija boards, I guess began, according to this bio, began when he basically got one from his grandmother or from his grandmother's estate. Pretty much that's all it took me. You know, my first one, and I was hooked, and I've been hooked ever since. He goes, and I mean, this man is a walking encyclopedia of Ouija boards and talking boards. That's the only way I can describe him. In 2013, he became one of the founding members of the Talking Board Society, which actually did some great good. We're going to talk about some of the graves, the markers that they've put up, which is really amazing. And in 2019, he took his collection and brought it to the witch city itself, Salem, Massachusetts. And he created an amazing private museum that you can go see called the Witch Board Museum. Salem Witch Board Museum, sorry, because he's got one in Baltimore too. But it is amazing. So guys, please, let's welcome someone who I'm telling you, I really, really respect this guy. Not just because he's pretty cool, not just because he hangs out, he's got a place in the Salem area, but because we're going to call him tonight Mr. Ouija. So everybody, please welcome John Kozik to the Black Cat Lawn. John, how are you, my friend? Thank you for being here.
I'm doing great, Tim. Thank you for such a wonderful introduction. And I tell you, I'm really happy to be here and to see your face here. I've missed you since I've last seen you a year or so ago. So thank you for having me on.
And I'm going to tell you what, you were deadly. When we first met up in Sault Ste. Marie, you were deadly because I could not walk past your display room, not stop in and buy something.
Yeah.
I probably bought 4 to 5, probably 5 boards from you.
I think you did.
They are some hallmarks of my collection. They're beautiful, and I am so thankful that you did sell them. And my friend John, he is just, as a matter of fact, he just stopped in. There he is, right there.
Hey, John.
And I just want to let everybody know, John, a year ago, almost didn't have any boards. Now, he's got 50, most of them being high value. Because why? I infected him.
You encourage him.
John. I'm sorry that you have to go and eat cornflakes for dinner now because you're buying all these boards. But I've got to say that I'm so thrilled that you're actually collecting something that I love. But anyway, John, tell everybody about that. I mean, about your grandmother. What? I mean, seriously, you got this board,
mm-hmm.
and then what was it that just kind of that hooked you so much?
Well, I mean, so her board that I inherited has that very classic look I think most people think about with a Ouija board. It's got the couples in the corner and very iconic imagery. But when I went online to learn more about it in the late 90s, I was really blown away and fascinated that there were really, hundreds, if not thousands of other competitors against Ouija and other different looks to the Ouija board. So I thought, wow, I knew they were rare. I've been into collecting lots of things, been in antique stores and flea markets my whole life. I had never seen something other than the Parker Brothers looking Ouija board.
Mm-hmm.
And,
right.
But I after I went online, I found one, an old Swami board. And after that, I was like, geez, these need company. They're lonely. And, probably 6 years of collecting, I bought as many as I could find, every different one I could. I started setting budgets. I wouldn't spend more than $25, including shipping. Then I bought all those. It went to 50, went to 75, got around 100. And within 6 years, I probably had close to 200, maybe almost 300 boards in that time. Wow. And but the 6-year mark is the funny mark because I didn't know any other collectors in that first 6 years. I had started running ads on Craigslist amongst other places. And our good friend Calvin Von Crush, he was the first person to actually respond to one of my ads telling me that he also collected Ouija boards. So pretty funny enough that we met that way, but also that to meet someone else is into collecting as I was.
What I love about the boards is, a lot of people are afraid of them and all that. We'll talk a little bit about that later. I love the artwork. I absolutely adore the artwork. The artwork to me is so indicative of the time period in which it was created. I mean, you have that Far East look, and then you have the plain looks, and then you have, going into the blue ghost, era. It is absolutely gorgeous. Is that gorgeous? But let's talk about, where did this come from? When did this, I won't say the craze, but when did the board start to be manufactured?
So the board doesn't start really getting mass produced until 1890 in Baltimore. But prior to that, it had evolved from the spiritualist movement, where people were using, it evolves quite quickly from counting knocks that they incur. They hear, like the Fox sisters,
Mm-hmm.
trying to figure out what letter of the alphabet that might correspond with. And it's taking a very long time to count knocks. So they introduce an alphabet board where now they ask the spirit a question and they just start pointing at the alphabet with their finger and waiting for a knock. And that's still a pretty slow conversation. So a device from Europe, from the spiritualist movement there, called the automatic writing planchette, which has a pencil. It looks very similar to what you see with the Ouija board today. Yep, there's one right there. Pencil at the front, wheels in the back. And somebody would channel a spirit to themselves and then write or draw on a piece of paper whatever came through. So this device basically comes to America, cross paths with the alphabet board here, and they evolve, merge together. And so homemade for many years until finally 1890, finally a businessman in Baltimore, Charles Kennard, he produces the first board, just calls it a witch board, just a very generic name. Yep, that's Charles there. And a couple months later, a woman named Helen Peters, she asked the board what it wanted to be called. And the board spelled back Ouija. She asked, what does it mean? And the board spelled back good luck. So the board named itself. Ouija becomes the first mass-produced board, and it's a brand name like Kleenex to tissues,
Mm-hmm.
Ouija to talking boards. And that patent that they get covers them from any competition for 16 years. So not until 1908 can someone legally make an alphabet board with a separate pointing device. So that's really why Ouija is the brand we kind of know. No one is aware of these knockoff brands that you and
Mm-hmm.
I obsessively collect, but there are thousands of other competitors with different names, and some of them do steal the name, the trademark, and put it on their product. But Ouija is the brand we know because of that 16-year head start.
Now we talk about the very first people who the very first person or company that made them. It was the Kennard Novelty Company,
Yep.
correct?
Correct.
Now, what happened? Why did Kennard end up selling that the patent or the trademark to other people?
Well, when he starts the company, he's basically there's 4 other people with him, and about a year later, he leaves the company. A year after that, Elijah Bond, who patented the Ouija, leaves the company, and the other 3 people are kind of left with it, and so they changed the name to Ouija Novelty Company. Shortly after that, they ask William Fuld with his brother Isaac to run it, but it's kind of gone through these different people running the company. But during when the patent existed, it's being paid to the last 3 people that stay with the company, essentially.
Now, we as people who are used to this board, we owe the Fuld brothers a great praise, because they actually were the ones that really kind of pushed it
Yes.
into the mainstream, wasn't it? Because up until then you had the spiritualist movement, and of course the spiritualist movement was growing, and the board itself was great because people, you didn't have to have these traveling mediums come to you and visit you and stay in your house and all that, where you could become your own medium. But the Fuld brothers really seemed to really came across a great idea of how they put it out there. What was their idea for mass marketing it?
Well, the Ouija kind of wears a lot of hats, but you're right. When the Ouija came out, it is selling pretty well right away, but by the 3rd year, the sales come down because no one really needs a second piece of wood in their house. These are long-lasting items. So, but when Fuld takes over in the late 1800s, he is just adamant in advertising it, pushing it. He's calling it scientific. He's just playing up the mystery of the board. And by the time you get to World War I mean, you don't realize this, but Ouija is actually a dating game by that point. It's people using it in the guise of getting together, unchaperoned and things like that. And so that is just part of the bloom where, Norman Rockwell's famous Saturday Evening Post drawing from 1920. By the 20s, they've popularized it so much, it makes it to a dozen or so magazine covers, probably a dozen or so songs written about the Ouija by 1920. So, yes, William Fuld especially is pretty synonymous to Ouija. Him and his family went on to make it for, close to 70 years altogether.
Now, our good friend Robert Murch.
Yes, he said to say hello to you. By the way,
Oh, I love him.
I love him as well.
He's another one. You know what? He's one of the back when I first met him, we were all a lot younger. A lot sprier.
Did you have hair back then too?
No, I didn't.
No, okay.
Neither did he.
Yeah.
Neither one of us had hair. Although this was darker. I will say this was brown.
Yeah.
But he what was amazing to me was in his collection that, well, first off, he actually was able to make contact with descendants
Yes.
of the Fold family. And I believe they gave it to him, was one of the brass stencils, because what we see now is mass produced and it's all printed very nicely. But back then, everything was done by hand and stencil. How many, just a ballpark figure, in the beginning, how many of these stenciled like canard boards and all that did they actually produce, opposed to when it became a manufacturing item?
Well, for the stencils, I mean, because they have to make them in both sizes, they're available in two sizes, but they lasted for a good amount of time before they'd have to make another one. But I mean, I don't know at the time how many they might have had. Each factory had a couple, but today we probably only know surviving 5 or less.
My God, that's amazing to me.
Yeah, the one he has a really great, amazing story to it. And we talk about William and his brother Isaac Fold, and then I mentioned just William by himself because Isaac essentially was ousted from the company, and it caused a huge rift in that family. 97 years, both sides of the family didn't talk to each other. Hi, MJ. And Murch really, by contacting the family and trying to get them to find out more information about the Ouija board from them, he was able to get both sides to get past their problems in the past and kind of make up. It was their at this point, it's 3 generations in. It's their grandparents. They're like, they're not even alive. We don't even know what the rift between these two people were. And so Murch got the two sides together, had a family reunion. And because he's such an amazing researcher, he was actually able to tell them more about their family than they had ever knew. What was the problem between them, what the lawsuits between these brothers were. And as a thank you, they gifted him the pocket watch that William Fold was wearing when he fell from the roof of the factory that the Ouija told him to build. But the funny thing about the stencil is Isaac had gone on to produce a board called the Oriole board, which looked just like the Ouija, just a different name, Oriole instead of Ouija. Well, a couple months after this family reunion, the family, Isaac's side, was going through some of his belongings, and they had an old steam trunk in the basement. They were dragging it up the stairs. They lost the grip. It fell to the bottom and smashed open. They found a hidden secret compartment at the bottom of the trunk, and it had that stencil.
Oh, wow.
So the stencil that Murch has is pretty important because the Ouija logo has been removed by very angrily these jagged cuts that you see, so that he could make a second stencil to put Oriole in. And so it's a pretty unique piece because you kind of get an idea of how much Isaac must have not liked his brother at the time to have gotten this stencil and modified it. But so that's a really cool piece because I think it not is it just rare being a stencil, but it really has some great family history to it.
It does. That's amazing. That's amazing. I did not know about that.
Yeah.
Now, you briefly mentioned about William Fold falling off the roof of his factory in Baltimore.
Sure.
Tell everybody the story about why he built it and what happened.
Yeah, so Fold, he used the Ouija board, William Fold, and it told him that he should prepare for big business. And he interpreted that by building a second factory in Baltimore. And sometime later, he was supervising the installation of a flagpole up on the roof of the building. He ended up falling off the roof and dying from his injuries. On his deathbed, he had told his family, don't sell Ouija. And I don't know what he meant. I don't know, did he mean don't sell the Ouija board or the Ouija brand? But funny enough, 39 years to the day, on the actual anniversary of his death, that's the day the family sold to Parker Brothers in Salem.
Wow.
Yeah.
And how many years did Parker Brothers produce the board?
Parker Brothers did it until they went out of business, where Hasbro took their assets. So they took over in 66. I think Hasbro takes over by the early 2000s-ish. So that's a pretty good run as well. 35 years, roughly, give or take. You know.
Yeah, that's amazing. Let me just show everybody. I showed you off. I showed you before the show. This is one of my latest acquisitions. It's a it's about 1911, 1913 board.
Yeah.
I love, and you know what I love about these, John? They're beat up.
Oh
I
yeah.
don't like anything that's pristine. When
No.
it's antique, I love to see the scrapes. I
Yeah.
love to see where the planchette went across, the face of the board.
It's
And to me, that speaks to me. But this is my new pride and joy. Unfortunately, my buddy John, who is now addicted to this stuff, just goes and shows me up with everything. But that's all
Yeah.
right. But that's one of the things I have to love. Now, you know what? Let's talk a little bit about the way people, the way Ouija boards would go, and there were their highs and lows when it comes to sales of Ouija boards. And correct me if I'm wrong, but in times of peace, Ouija board sales were kind of okay. But in times of turmoil, they really spiked up.
Absolutely. I think, to me, the Ouija's always popular because, again, there's virtually no competition to it. But I think any time of times of trouble, uncertainty, people are turning to the Ouija. So, you got to think World War I sales go up. By the 20s, it's then, a dating game. The Great Depression, which you would think, everyone lost their money in the stock market, no one would want to use a Ouija board. Quite the opposite. The Fold family had 3 factories in Baltimore at that point.
That's amazing.
And just selling one single board. World War II, we know of these knockoff brands to Ouija, to which there's probably 200 of them during World War II. So you can imagine how many boards Ouija might have sold during that wartime, 66, when Parker Brothers buys it, they pay $1 million for the Ouija brand, and that's the most paid for a game at that point. Amazing. And the following year, it outsells Monopoly. 2 million Ouija boards are sold in 67. Exorcist comes out, scares the hell out of people. No, Ouija boards, get a bad rap, but sales went up 15%. Today, I sell a lot of vintage boards at the museum, and my sales went up a couple of years ago. I thought, well, COVID, everyone's sick of being locked in and Netflix and things like that, but my sales are still up. And I think, sadly, everybody knows somebody who's been affected by death from COVID. And so I think that affects the sales. In the last 2 years, Hasbro has licensed 8 different Ouija boards to be produced. So the brand is on, everything from an Exorcist board finally to Beetlejuice, Wednesday, a Salem edition, a classic version, a wooden one sold at Spirit Halloween, 2 at the Five Below stores. So right now, 8 different Ouija boards are for sale.
That's amazing to me.
Yeah.
And for I don't want to call it a game, but for something that is so maligned, so often hated, so feared, to hear of those sales and where it's being sold has always been amazing to me. John's got a question for you, John.
Yeah.
What's your favorite board design?
Good question. Board design. Ouija's what we all kind of think about, and I think that's very iconic. So I think a lot of boards kind of copy that double arch. But for the design, Tim and I were talking about earlier, the Michi Manitou, and that is something where they basically take the alphabet in an arch up and down, and then the opposite at the bottom. So it's almost like a diamond shaped on it. And I think that's one of the more interesting because it reminds you that it's a Ouija board by the alphabet and the layout, but it's different enough to set itself apart from being a different competitor.
Now, I knew Ray Buckland, and we were just talking about the Buckland Museum of Witchcraft and Magic in Cleveland, Ohio, before the show. And Ray produced one, was a circular one. He loved it. He swore by it. And he loved the fact that, everything was circular and it was easy to point at, but his planche would look like a star.
Yep.
And he would use that. Now, were there other ones? Were there other boards that actually were created in that
Oh
sort of
yeah,
pattern?
quite a few. What's funny though, you just mentioned that Buckland board. I've been photographing my collection finally, and that I took 3 pictures today. The Buckland board was one of those. It's so funny it's not next to me at this very second because I just took the picture of it today. The circle boards, though, I mean, I know of dozens of them, and I think they make it very user friendly. You know, when you put the circle, the alphabet to the center of the board, it really makes it so the planchette won't fall off the board. And I think they're some of the most unique designs. You might probably have one in your collection, but the Sierra board, for instance, it's
Yes, I have one.
in the
Yeah.
center, but then it probably has 200 plus words that are spelled out, and it speeds up the conversation. So you don't spell every letter, every word, but a circle design.
I absolutely, I adore them. And I think that's what I love about the boards. I mean, first of all, I love the art. Don't get me wrong. Absolutely love the art. I love the versatility. I'm not going to lie. I have all 3 of the boards, the ones that they made into the trays. I forget what they're, love those. But the fact that there's so many different types and there's so many different ways of working with them. And you can see each and every person or each and every design, every company did a little something different, tried to tweak it a little bit for popular demand. That's what I think is so cool about it. I think it's one of those great things. Yeah. Now, when we start talking about boards, you hit the nail on the head with why they're so maligned. Let's talk about The Exorcist and what and what they did. Now, the problem with The Exorcist was, and you're looking at a guy that was like in 8th grade when The Exorcist came out of St. Andrew's School, and it was like the nuns would go, "Children, do not see this movie. Do not see this movie." And guys like me were like, couldn't wait for Friday nights, because Friday nights were like, you had all the horror movies on after 11:30, and I think The Exorcist kind of gave the movie was sensational, but it gave the talking board a black eye. Yeah. It really did. What do you think about that? Do you think it did, or do you think it did?
I think it's the final spark. I mean, if you want to talk pop culture, Ouija boards are in horror movies from the beginning, from the movie called The Terror, 1928. Silent film. It's first talking horror movie. So it's in over 500 films to this day. But the brilliance of The Exorcist is a couple things. They don't really talk about it. They never say that's what made her head spin or why she's possessed. So it just really plants in people's heads very subliminally. And I get people who come to the museum and say they love that movie. They've seen it a dozen times. And then they question, are you sure there's a Ouija board in that movie? So that tells me that it's very subliminal. And of course, it came out, before video rental stores, before cable television. So people only see it. And then years later, go to a party, they pull a Ouija out, and they're like, they don't want to touch it. But the funny thing is, it was based on a true story as well. And, any horror movie based on a true story, you think that exactly what you see on the screen is something that could probably happen to you. And the story I love to tell is Murch actually got to meet William Peter Blatty, the writer. And they were doing Exorcism Live after Roland Doe passed away, who was based on, with Chip Coffey there and stuff. And he asked Blatty, like, the Ouija board wasn't part of the original story. So why did you put it in your story? And Blatty told him, I was just looking for what caused the possession. I thought the Ouija board was just a good way to explain how the kid got into mischief without the parents knowing. And because it outsold Monopoly in 1967, by the time the movie came out, almost every house in America would have had a Ouija board in it. And what's scarier than something in your house? So, that's the funny thing about The Exorcist, is that it's subliminal to most people.
It's funny when you start thinking about it, because I was so used to seeing him, and I was, and I had used them when I was a kid. But when I read Troy Taylor's his re-edited version of what happened, they talk about an ant that comes in and brings a Ouija board, and they don't really allude to what it being the doorway. But on the other hand, they don't. He makes sure that it is known there, and what happened afterwards, because the ant was a spiritualist, and And then once everything started rolling through there, she couldn't do anything, and I don't think the pastor could do anything. So it was just one of those things where, it just got a bad rap. I believe it really did get a bad rap. But anybody that was like a teenager, and I'm sure John, being a musician, this. If it's bad for you, you got to try it.
Yeah. Tell someone not to do something, they're only going to make it find a way to do it,
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. John, I just want to share something with you. You're looking at a guy when he was a preteen get on his AMF Flyer bicycle, with the huge balloon tires and the built-in light. You got to have the built-in light with a basket on there, with a sleeping bag tied to the basket and a Ouija board tied on the rat trap on the back, going to somebody's house to stay the night. So,
amazing.
This is why I think the two of us gotta get along. I really do. I really do. Now, you know what? Let's talk about. Now, I teach a lot of some of the old ways of spiritualism and that. I mean, I just taught a class on dowsing, and I'll teach things of like table tipping, and of course automatic writing, and sort of that sort of stuff. And I always try to explain how this stuff works in a rational way, because I try to demystify it so that it no longer becomes like something that's inherently evil. How do you think it works?
Well, the way I handled that question is, first of all, let me do my rap here. I first of all, I let people think, it's all about your intent. It's like a car, it's like a gun, it's how you want to use an item. And certainly you want to do something stupid with an item, something stupid probably can happen. But the Ouija to me is a tool to have a conversation. And I think of it very similar to how you would a cell phone, which means, you wouldn't break or burn it. If you had a bad conversation, you hang up. Cell phones, sometimes you don't know who you're talking with, and you dial a number in the middle of the night, not everyone wants to talk to you. But, I don't think it's anything to fear if anything like that happens. You hang up. I make a joke that I don't say goodbye. I don't say goodbye to most people I talk to. I don't believe in a Ouija board. But as far as how it works, clearly it works. You're not going to argue that it doesn't work because they're not selling that many boards to people that are broken,
Exactly.
But how it works, I really leave it up to the people. The Fox sisters, every religion out there really forms on this faith that things don't seem possible. That's how they start. And I put the Ouija board in that same category. In the museum, I have boards that people create to speak to their past lives, read to other people's minds. Our friend Karen claims to communicate with plants and animals through the Ouija. Mm-hmm. I'm open to all those things personally, because I've never heard anyone tell me a Ouija story where I thought they were lying to me. So, I believe they believe. So I really leave it up to the person to decide for themselves, but certainly I believe they work. And I think if you only try to think of it as one way, as maybe your subconscious, for instance, I think we can talk about the power of the mind and how strong that is. And if you want to talk about, anything from being sick and the doctor giving you a placebo, and that can maybe increases your chances of survival, or positive mental attitude, the mind is certainly not been tapped into in that way. And so I have lots of those kind of stories that if you want to explain a story one way, I think you're missing out on maybe another possibility. So, but for me personally, they work. My grandmother used it alone, flew on the thing. And but I like to leave it up to the people to decide for themselves how they think it works.
It's funny because too many, in this day and age, I've been finding a lot of people who try to go and find a logical explanation for it. And sometimes I always tell people, listen, guys, it goes into the realm of belief. We have to remember that everything that we work with when it comes to metaphysics, spiritualism, divination, the board, all falls in under the realm of belief. But as I tell people, if you want to look at it logically, the ideomotor response is huge, where subliminally you're actually moving stuff. You're, and you're using for dowsing rods, or you got your hand on the planchette. I mean, you're moving it. You don't realize you're moving it. But I always ask people, where does this information come from? Where is it? Why do you get it? Is it a higher self? Okay, let's talk about a higher self, but let's go and realize maybe your higher self doesn't know because you may not have ever been exposed to an answer. Where do these correct answers come from that you would not know?
Yeah.
And people often sit there and they go, maybe you're right. Maybe you are the antenna. Maybe you are going and tapping into something else. And that's what I like to, I want to go and I want to kind of demystify it because
Sure.
you know as well as I do, people, the minute, I don't know how many times I will go and I'll see a Ouija board and go, oh my God, this is great. I must own it, especially in a, in a thrift shop or, Goodwill. I bought one a little while ago for $4 in a Goodwill,
Nice.
and, people, as you're going out, they're going, what are you going to do with that? Talk to my parents. I don't know, and they get like really freaked. And I'm just not talking about Christians in that. I mean, people generally get freaked by it. Why do you think people are always afraid of stuff like this? I mean, I was brought up differently. I was brought up Roman Catholic, but with my relatives being in Lilydale, the spiritualist, assembly. So I was really, from an early age, I was actually, really exposed to it. So it didn't bother me. But why do you think people are always afraid of this stuff?
Well, I think number one, a lot of people grow up with their parents telling them don't do it, and so that plays a little bit. But with going back to The Exorcist, it's subliminal to a lot of people. Almost everyone saw that movie, and I think that just plants in the back of their head somewhere. The Ouija board, don't touch them, and I think because people, the intent on how people use it has changed. I wanted to say that after The Exorcist, the Vietnam War ended. Right.
Yes.
And that's the last major U.S. war with a draft. So less people using it the way it's really intended to, and more people just kind of using it as a dare game, a sleepover party game.
Right.
And so because that intent changed, so I think people have used the Ouija board maybe when they were younger and probably didn't have the best experience. And so they don't want to ever touch it again. One and done, so to speak. So I think that has a lot to do with it as well.
MJ has written, I've had a spirit come through the board speaking in a forgotten language, and we translated it, and the answers are spot on. A forgotten, very old language that no one around the board could speak. How often does something like that happen? I mean, I've seen it. I've seen this happen where not so much an ancient language, but Spanish or I think it was French too, that had come through the board. And then we had written down every letter and had a translated letter later. Is this something that's more common now or even common in the past?
Yeah, no, it's certainly common. I mean, when I saw that from MJ, it reminded me right away of Patience Worth. Pearl Coran, a woman, just 1917-ish, whatever, using the Ouija, talking to a spirit, Patience Worth. Patience Worth dictated a book through the Ouija, letter by letter, and they ended up publishing it. But scholars couldn't explain it. Pearl dropped out of school. She was illiterate. It was written in Old English. People hadn't spoken that way in 100 years. So, right there is a very similar story to that. So, yeah, I think it does happen, but some people might not know to translate or to do something with it. I think when people use it today, a lot of people just ask very short, simple questions, and they just try to remember. I really encourage people to have maybe someone in the room writing stuff down, or like how Karen does it, and Karen Dahlman will write as she's going and then not read it back till the end. And I think when you do that, it creates nice notes that, for something like that, you could translate if you needed to, or you can call back to it later on.
And again, one of my greatest treasures is when I find a board and you lift up that little cardboard and you find all the notes where people had recorded what came through. To me, I grab those, put them in plastic, and so that nothing happens.
It's like the board you were showing that you could see it was well worn.
Yeah,
people used it. You like to think about what maybe what were they asking, what kind of questions, was it just fun, or was it like real serious? Like answers they needed to get. So
Exactly. Now, the one of the things that people think is a modern phenomena is people will go and they will listen to everything that the Ouija board says, and then they act on it immediately. And it's funny because I never could understand that.
yeah,
And then I started reading about it, and then I realized that this is nothing new. People back, well, during the Depression, they took all, the Ouija board said, take all your money out and put it in X, Y, and Z, and then they lost everything. And they blamed it on the Ouija board. But crimes also are committed, and they use the Ouija board a lot of times as a scapegoat. I mean, we had a famous murder up here where Native Americans used two Native American women used this Ouija board and used it as a scapegoat. The one convinced this other one that to go and kill her lover's wife. But do you think that we are in a position now where I think we're a little bit more savvy? The Ouija board comes and says something to you like, gee, John, I want you to sell all your boards to Tim Shaw for $6. Do you think that we're at that point where we're a little bit more savvy, or do you think that people really think that these become omnipotent communications?
well, I have free will, so whatever the board tells me to do, I can decide to do for myself.
Right.
And right now, selling for $6 is probably not what I would want to do.
Listen, listen, $6 and 3 Subway coupons. How's that?
Oh, now you've upped it. Okay, well, we'll talk after the show for sure. Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head as well, because when you talk about being a scapegoat, so I have stories, murder stories, kill your neighbor, kill whatever, and
right.
Not that I think they were just they wanted to do it regardless, and that the Ouija board just became the out for explaining why they did it. Yeah.
It's almost, and not to belittle it, it's almost like the temporary insanity plea.
Sure.
That's what I equate it to. And I see that, in several, let's face it, I think it was 2012. Wasn't it 2012 in Texas where, some kids, the Ouija board said to stab somebody and one of their friends, and he survived. But it was like the Ouija board told me to do it, and he got off in a temporary insanity plea. Yeah. And that to me has always been a shame, but I think that's human nature. Let's talk about the museum. What possessed you, John? What possessed you to open up this museum? Because I personally love places like that. I adore people that do that, and and I know it had to be such a a leap of faith.
Sure.
But what possessed you to open that board or open the museum?
To me, it kind of starts when I mentioned that woman Helen Peters, who named the Ouija, and sadly she was written out of history for a very long time. Murch only uncovered her story about 12 years ago, and she was buried without a headstone. Her name wasn't added to the headstone, and so the Talking Board Historical Society raised money to put that in. And I really wanted to, I'm part of that group. I wanted to do something to raise money. And I was not a public speaker or anything like that at the time. I was just a collector. And that's Helen Stone in Denver. And I thought, well, me and Calvin and I could do a lecture at the Satanic Temple about Ouija boards. And we did this display in their gallery. And at the end of the month, they wanted to keep it up another month. So to me, I saw that other people were interested in this history. It wasn't just me and these kind of weird friends I had found. But every collector would like to open their own museum. And Murch and I used to spend almost every weekend in Salem just looking for spaces back when he lived here. And finally, I found the right space. I found a space that was in the back of a store. It allowed me to kind of set up a self-guided location so that I could stay at my job that I had had for 20 plus years. Even though I was a musician, I had worked in a warehouse for a long time. I was valued. I was paid very well, very respected. I felt, really treated really well there. So I created a self-guided space museum. And then over time, I was at the museum more than I was at work. I was going every day after work, going to the museum. And it it just came to a point where like I couldn't do both things. And so I had a very amazing boss who allowed me to tell me I would always have a job if I needed it with him. So not much of a leap if I know I have a fallback, you know. But that's how I finally opened the space in Salem.
How was it received? Now, of course, so we're talking about which city, you know, and back in '82 when I first got married, I took my wife up there, and the only place that had anything that was occult was Lori Cabot's house.
Yeah.
You know, she had her little store in her Victorian home.
Yeah.
And that was it. That was it. And now, of course, it's a whole different tourist
Sure.
industry up there. How was it received? Because I always loved that. I always loved to hear that, because like with the Buckland Museum, they were kind of like a little nervous.
Sure.
And that grand opening, I mean, they were lined up down the street from different countries, different states. I mean, all over, just to be able to see parts of his collection. How were you guys received?
I'm doing very well. I think, you know, I needed to have the space in Salem. That's where Parker Brothers made it for a number of years. There was local history. So there's really no other place for me living close by to have a museum. So Salem had to be it. And Salem has amazing tourism. I mean, most people are familiar with October, you know, the first Saturday, 125,000 people on the street. Halloween is 1.4 million people on the street.
It's amazing.
But it's grown to be more than October. Salem is really a place where it has it year round, and most places in New England aren't tourism year round with snow.
Right.
And the store in the front of the museum, they do ghost tours 7 days a week. So I have a great, you know, partnership with them where they kind of control the register. They get, you know, I'm in the back, and I am amazed at how many people not only are able to find me. I keep it like a speakeasy, Tim. I like to make it so that you have to look for me, or you stumble upon it and you're like, wait, that's a Ouija museum. I am off the beaten path in the sense that I'm in the back of another store. I'm on the main street right next to Lori Cabot's Crowhaven corner, her old house. But I pretty much don't take days off. I'm there 7 days a week, telling people stories, guiding them around as best I can in the museum. And like I said, I make a living just talking about Ouija boards. Opened a second location in Baltimore. So I'm a guy that all I do for a living is talk about Ouija boards. That's how popular it is in Salem for me.
You know what? I am so proud to know you, because you know what? You've taken a passion and you've turned it not just into a business, but into a life's calling. And that to me that's phenomenal. Let me ask you this one. What are you still looking for? What is that one? What is that one board that you are just searching for relentlessly?
We could do a whole show on just what we're looking for here. It's hard to say, but I would say one of the grails that I'm really looking for is a very early competitor to Ouija was a company called W.S. Reed. They made a board called the Espirito, and the alphabet goes straight across on it. And I don't have the planchette for that. So Leominster, Mass. is where it was made. My band used to practice in that town. I actually have been to where the factory is, been inside the building. I've met with the mayor to try to help us find some clues to some stories about W.S. Reed. We've done a cable show with him and stuff. And so to me, right now, my grail is finding the planchette for that board, because it's local. Amazing. I'm connected to that town, and it's a very old piece, 1892.
That's amazing. Here's another thing. We start talking about the automatic writing planchettes.
Yeah.
How hard is it now to find them? Are they still available out there on the open, and I won't say open market, but are they still, obtainable?
I think there are, just like Ouija boards, there are some that are going to be extremely rare and hard to find. But I think if you are obsessed to look and hunt, you can find them. Those are things that they're not part of really what I collect. Mm-hmm. I like to tell part of the story in the museum as the evolution of spiritualism and how they play to the Ouija board. So I own probably 15 or 20 of them at this point. and I turn some down at the, because I do find them, but I'm not a hardcore collector with that. So if someone knows what they have and they're selling it, those can almost be what the most expensive Ouija board could sell for,
Yeah.
like well over $1,000. And so I think you can look at them. I think you have to be very obsessed to hunt, and you've got to think outside the box. You can't just be like, I'm on eBay every day, because eBay is only going to bring you so much.
Yeah, I know.
It's
I know.
competitive as well.
And I am on eBay every day.
Sure.
I'm not going along with other players like everybody else. Every collector I know is they hit eBay first, and then they go to all their secondary and other secondary sources. You know what? Before we go, there is a style that I really has intrigued me, and it's is it called the wire Ouija, wireless Ouija boards or boards?
Wireless messenger?
Yes, that's it.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Yes. What I mean, what's the story behind that? Because that's one of those ones that to me is like, that would be my holy grail.
I didn't know you were looking for. I just had one of those, Tim. You got to give me your list of what you're looking for. I'll hook you up. I promise.
Okay, you got it.
The wireless messenger was a board from 1916. It was made in Meriden, Connecticut, where our buddy Calvin lives, and it's a pretty small board. If I had to guess the size, I would say it's like maybe 7 inches by 10 inches or so. It's got a railing around the edge, so the planchette is really large. It fits on it, and it doesn't fall off the board. The alphabet is kind of just straight across, almost like a typewriter would write it out. And I like it that it's over 100 years old, but it's a pretty unique design, being smaller and having that rail on it. Yeah, I've been maybe 15 years or so ago. Calvin, I think they were converting the old factory in Meriden over to condominiums, and they found a stash of, a couple dozen of them anyways. And I know Calvin had bought quite a few of them. So 15 years ago, the market was flooded, so to speak. But they've dried up since. And I would guess that would probably sell probably 12 to 15, depending on the condition and the planchette and all that stuff. Yeah.
Now, here's the most important question. And I only save this for my important guests, which it's a vast majority of my guests, but I'm going to ask anyway. End of your life, man. They're planting you. They're going to put a stone over the top of you. What do you want on it?
Well, it's funny you mentioned that, Tim, because since with the TBHS, we've done the Helen Stone, the Elijah Bond headstone and stuff. And, I'm thinking about actually doing a Ouija headstone myself.
That would be amazing.
People can't visit me at the museum. They can go visit me in a cemetery or something. But I just started thinking about it like, I'm getting older. What am I going to do with my stuff? What am I going to do with me? And why not turn into a Ouija headstone?
That's awesome. I think you should be cremated, and I think they should plastinate you in a planche and sell them. I think I would buy 2 of them, John, because I like you so much. Two. Tell everybody how they can get a hold of you, what's going on at the museum, and everything that's going on in your world.
Yeah, well, ideally, I would love to see people in person, and I would love you to come to visit Salem, 127 Essex Street, Salem Witch Board Museum, and you'll see me. I'll tell you some stories. If you can't get there, I have a second location in Baltimore, very specific to Baltimore Ouija history. And if you can't visit in person, you can always visit Instagram, Facebook, Salem Witch Board Museum there. I highly encourage you to check out the Talking Board Historical Society. That's really the people, my friends, who are the historians for this stuff and really have kind of put these markers around. Great nonprofit. But ideally, I would love to meet you in person.
It'd be awesome. And I'm going to tell you what, guys, meeting John in person is probably one of the biggest thrills you're going to get if you are a Ouija collector. And just do me a favor. Be careful when you say, do you have any boards for sale? Because guess what? There goes your lunch money. I'm going to tell you that right now because he has some beautiful boards. I every time I see you or Calvin, I'm buying a board from you. I can't help it. It's just one of those things. John, thank you so much for being
Thank you, Tim. Great to see you. I hope I don't
stick around.
Hope it doesn't take another year to see you.
Stick around. Oh, I hope not. Stick around. Let me talk. I want to thank you properly off the air, but this has been so great, so informative. And it is always a pleasure to really have someone of your caliber to talk about one of my passions. And so that's what's so great. Guys, be right back with you. I'll see you in just a couple minutes. Everybody, he's amazing. John is amazing. I just can't believe the information that he has, everything he can talk about, and the collection. When I saw the collection that he brought with him up to Sault Ste. Marie, it was breathtaking. The 2 years that I was up there and he was up there with the collection, it was just something that I just couldn't believe it. I just could not believe it. So guys, I want to just, before we close off, I know we're in a vast sea of insanity. Everybody is up in arms. Everybody's worried. Try to keep a level head, okay? In all things. The Andrew Jackson Davis, one of the pioneers in the spiritualist movement, said, in all things, keep an even head, stay in balance. If you do, things will go smoothly, and be kind. That's all I ask. So guys, take care. It's always good to see you. You've been listening to the Black Cat Lounge. I'm Tim Shaw. And guess what, guys? It's where the elite meet. Where else? Next to the dumpster transfer station. Ciao, babies. Take care. Be good. Bye-bye.